Hi, everybody. I'm Jonathan Quin. I set up a business called World First back in 2004 and built it up, and it was acquired by Ant Financial last year, which some of you will know better as Alipay. I think open banking, funnily enough, isn't a particularly commonly used term in China, but the spirit of what it's trying to do is quite widely accepted. You talked about I think you talked about the fact that a lot of banks are on the kind of bare minimum, the kind of regulatory minimum. And I was talking to a friend who runs one of the UK high street banks, and about a year ago I was talking to him about this, and he said, well, we're not going to turkeys vote for Christmas. And I think that that's because it's seen as a threat, not an opportunity. And what I think Alipay has done is, a lot of people think Alipay is the primary provider through a lot of its services, but actually almost all of it's done through partnerships. Its kind of core strategy is to cultivate local partnerships and kind of work with financial institutions to provide this multitude of services that they provide. And so I think if we can sort of change the rhetoric in Europe from this is a threat to this is an opportunity for you as the provider of the bowels of banking to access markets and segments or niches which you can't on your own and won't be able to prioritize the resources to provide, and still hold that core account or infrastructure at the back end, then I think then hopefully we actually and then hopefully they're self-incentivized to think that actually this is an opportunity and we're going to carrot, not stick. But I think that we're a bit away from that, because I think the kind of overactive amygdalas of the people that are running the banks are very fearful and don't see the opportunity. So I'm hoping that that some of the early examples maybe do follow more the kind of Alipay model of that will be a distribution platform for you. Ant's done lots of that with insurance and lending and even governments, councils and so on, and to provide a way for them to more efficiently collect funds or offer their service on a central platform. And then actually once they get their heads around that, they're not so directly competing with the person next door. They're like real estate on people's phones or something, that they've got a portal through which they can access 900 million users. And then it's about partnering to provide the best service to the customer. So Alipay actually, even I didn't realize this until quite recently, has been in Europe since 2012, already partners with 120 financial institutions in a number of ways, providing services for Chinese tourists traveling to UK and Europe. That's quite a big part of the business. And then also providing payment methods to collect money from sales in China and Tmall and so on. To look at the Chinese example, I mean, I think some of you will be very aware of the prevalence of Alipay and WeChat Pay and digital payments in China, but for those that aren't, it is truly staggering. Alipay has 900 million users, and it's actually quite difficult now to spend cash or even use cards. I think that's one thing that trips people up in China. They go out there and they think, well, I've heard there's no cash, but I'll be able to use my card. And you get to the end and they kind of look blankly at this piece of card that you're trying to hold in front of them, and they want WeChat Pay or Alipay. So I think, and personally, I think that is the direction of travel. I think it's very hard to believe that we're going to go backwards from that. So in terms of what's coming, I think that's probably relevant. Interestingly, they use QR codes there as opposed to contactless. Some of you will have seen just this week that PayPal's announced it's going to have some QR codes as a means to enable social distance payments. So you can actually read the QR code from quite a long way away. But I think during the kind of COVID period, that has been a catalyst for increased digital and kind of open banking type payments in China. And again, I think that's happening to some extent here. Certainly, obviously, Alipay you can use online or offline, and online usage definitely gone up materially. I think maybe just for your second point to think about the European perspective, I think that if you think about a traditional business model, you need to generate awareness and then you need to convert people. And I think things like the Just Giving offering open banking and some of the other sites that we're going to, both as a consumer and as a business, I'm seeing more of it in the public domain, and I think that brings people into the top of the funnel. Then for the conversion piece, we've got to make sure it's seamless and frictionless and easy to use, and it builds real value. And I think you're going to touch on that later. But so I think that this is the beginning of a catalyst, but I think we need to see more to really see that acceleration, so that the average person in the street knows what you're talking about when you say open banking. I think it's an acceleration of digital payments. I think I wouldn't want to be a cash provider at the moment. I think the acceleration of online ordering and mobile products. And I do think there will be an emergence of some sort of FinLife products in the West, which I don't think I could say at the moment truly exists. So FinLife to me is this kind of financial product that becomes a part of your life because it deals with all the parts of your life. And I think we'll see that to start to appear.